All right, well, in the interest of keeping to the schedule, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining me. My name is Alison Morris, and tonight we're going to be talking about the pandemic and the polyvagal theory. And I'm going to help you understand the stress response and how you can calm it. So who am I anyway? I am a certified emotional freedom techniques, also known as EFT or tapping practitioner, and I'm also a certified tension and trauma releasing exercises provider. That's also known as TRE. So I have lots of initials that I use all the time to shorten those up. I'm also a student of trauma, stress, and nervous system physiology, and like understanding why our bodies and our brains react the way they do when we're under pressure, when we're scared, when things go wrong, that sort of thing. And then how we can get back to sort of a better place, how we can regulate ourselves again. In particular, I've spent many, many years now, mostly online, working with a lot of parents of children with big emotions and behaviors, and so which can be really challenging for the parents. So I work a lot with parents. So what we're going to cover tonight is something called the polyvagal theory, which is really the neurophysiology of feeling safe. And then we're going to talk about a subconscious process called neuroception. We're going to learn why all the things that happen that we're going to talk about are, in fact, very adaptive. We're going to talk about the role of the pandemic in all of this, and then I'm going to go through probably pretty quickly a whole bunch of ways that you can soothe your stress response, or you can share with other people in your family or friends or whatever. So polyvagal theory is a theory that was first written about in a paper many years ago now by Dr. Stephen Porges. And it is, I should put this next in the bullet, it's related, so polyvagal meaning, poly meaning many, and vagal refers to something called is the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in our body. And it is called vagus because it wanders all over our body and has nerve endings connected to most of our organs. And the polyvagal theory was really quite revolutionary in some respects. It provided an explanation for the first time really about a number of different things. But what it provided in essence was an explanation for our stress response and also our need, really our biological imperative for connection and relationship. And it describes how these systems were developed evolutionarily and then how they operate in sort of modern times. And I'm going to go into much more detail. But the kind of cool thing about the vagus nerve is that it is very much a bilateral communication network. So information doesn't just go like from our brains down to our organs, but also from the organs back up to our brains. And so we'll get into a little bit more of that. So the three phases of our nervous system and that are described by the polyvagal theory. You probably heard of fight, flight, freeze response, and it used to just be called the fight, flight response, and then people added in the freeze response, and that's great. However, they're really distinct aspects of our nervous system physiology. So I'm going to start with the oldest part of our nervous system, which was, again, the very first to develop, evolutionarily speaking, and is not mammalian in its origins. It's reptilian, and that is the freeze response. This part of the vagus nerve is called the dorsal vagal part of this, which doesn't really matter, but it's a part of the parasympathetic nervous system. So you may have heard of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is more often associated with calm, with relaxed, that sort of thing, where the sympathetic nervous system is when we're agitated and aroused or angry, enraged, whatever. So, but the freeze response is like it is a hypo stimulus to the vagus nerve, meaning that it's a shutdown response. It has to do with immobilizing people. So this is where you get possums playing dead. And it's not, of course, just related to possums, but many other animals feign death when they are in life-threatening situations. And humans, as mammals, also sometimes have the same response. This can result in, probably the mildest form of it is just a form of dissociation, like where your mind disconnects from the present moment and you're just not there. It's like taking you off somewhere else, away from what's happening right in the moment. The kind of intermediate response is just slowing down, this sort of shutting down of things. So there's no energy to move, to run, to flee, to fight. The blood, your heart rate slows way down. People get really cold. Their digestion tends to shut down. Immune function shuts down. There's no energy for repair or growth in the body. It may result in fainting, right? Because the blood flow is so slow that there's just not enough blood reaching the brain. So also not doing a whole lot of really great thinking in this type of response. Unfortunately, there can be, in some instances, shame associated with this response, because people get, well, again, they feel ashamed that they did not do more. I should have tried to fight back. So I should have tried to get away. I should have, but I just couldn't move. So this response is the most dire. This is when your body thinks that its very survival is at issue. So the biological imperative of the freeze response in its sort of most mature form is just stay alive. Stay alive. Baseline function there. Okay, so this is the most sort of serious end of the stress response. The intermediate one is the fight or flight response, which of course way more of us are actually familiar with. This is where we talk about my blood was boiling. You can see people's faces get red. This is where, again, your digestion might slow down. And again, growth, repair, immune function, all that stuff goes offline, because you've got blood rushing to your extremities so that you can flee from the danger, or that you can confront it physically, fight. Important to know in this kind of intermediate version of the stress response, though, that blood is taken away from the higher order processes in the brain, so our kind of cortical functions. So hearing can become offline, except with the exception of like low noises that can that are associated with danger, right? Like a roar or a growl, that kind of thing. It also means though that sort of comprehending, analyzing, listening, forming really coherent thoughts, all of that stuff is not something that we are capable of when we get thrown into this response. Dan Siegel, who is in the forefront of this work, does a lot of work actually with children, but also in what's called interpersonal biology. He's got this great image. If your fist is this is your brain stem, is your wrist, and this is your kind of lower brain and midbrain, and then if you cover it up, that's the top of your brain. This is like all our higher order stuff that when you below your top, like it's literally offline, that higher order brain function is just gone. And that can be a nice way to sort of think about this. So the biological imperative associated with this aspect of the stress response is to stay safe, right? So there's threat, there's danger, at least the body senses threat or danger, but it is not necessarily life-threatening. Or else the body would again go into that freeze response and just basically take your body out of it, just shut it down entirely. All right. Then the last function to develop is what Stephen Porges calls the social engagement function. So I think I forgot to mention this about the freeze response. That part of the vagus nerve is unmyelinated, meaning it is not covered with this sort of fatty tissue that that allows communication to be much quicker. That's why the freeze response takes longer to kind of engage, to come online, because the message that like, oh my God, we're in serious trouble now, takes longer to communicate to like all the organs that have to respond to bring about that level of immobilization and shutdown. The social engagement system, however, is the most recent to develop evolutionarily speaking, and it is myelinated. That means that it's quick to come online. It's also quick to go offline though. So this is the part of our nervous system that is all about connection and relationship and play and even to a certain extent competitive sports, right? Like where we don't kill each other, but we're competing against each other and sort of pretending to be violent in some respects. Intimacy is possible here, right? Where we can let down our defenses sufficiently that we can engage in that level of contact with another person. So this social engagement is part of what's called the ventral vagal function. And again, it's a different part of the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the only phase that allows for digestion, for growth, for cellular repair, for restoration. This is what we're in when we're sleeping, right? Which is really the only time our brains can take the trash out. And when we do a lot of detoxification sorts of things, this is when sort of cells perform what's called apoptosis, where they essentially kill themselves because they're not misfunctioning, and new cells are grown. So health is very much associated with how much of our lives we can spend in the parasympathetic social engagement sort of setting of our nervous system. So this is sometimes a little bit crassly referred to as the sort of feed and breed part of the nervous system. right? If the sympathetic is fight or flight, this is feed or breathe, feed and breed. And I don't know, you may have heard other terminology along with this as well. The biological imperative for the social engagement system is to stay connected, because we are soothed by the presence of other human beings. It's one of the most important ways that we perform something called co-regulation, where our brains and actually our hearts, more importantly, our hearts come into something called entrainment, where they start mirroring each other. Our brain waves start to mirror each other, and our heart rate variability also starts to mirror each other. So it's really fascinating stuff. But this is one way where, you know, if you're with somebody who's calm, you're much more likely to calm down. If you're really stressed, the trick is that when you're around other people, they can start to kind of go where you are. And it can sometimes be the sort of dance to see kind of whose nervous system is going to win. Are you going to kind of get back into the calm parasympathetic state like other people you might be with, or are you going to more descend into the kind of a threatened state like maybe some of the other people that you're around? So that's just a kind of a summary of the polyvagal theory. Okay, let's so I sort of mentioned this, but our stress response engages in reverse evolutionary order. So that connection and relationship function is the first to go offline, right? It was the last to be developed. It's the first to go online or offline. Then the next thing that we slip into, which is really what we call the stress response, is the fight or the flight, the sympathetic nervous system coming online. If that isn't going to cut it, or if the situation feels like incredibly vulnerable, then essentially that death is imminent or severe danger, then and only then do we go into the freeze response. But that freeze response, important to know here though, that with that biological imperative to stay alive, the body isn't much concerned with what the heck is going on with the body or the brain or the heart or anything, you know, right, with us as human beings. Its really primary directive is just to keep the heart beating, the lungs breathing, so then, you know, healing can happen afterwards. So again, that's pretty dire stuff. We tend then to come out of these processes in the reverse order. So if somebody's in a freeze state, often they need to come back through the fight or flight response before they can return to a parasympathetic, the ventral vagal part of the parasympathetic nervous system response, which again is how we connect and relate to people. Which of course can be a real challenge depending on what people have gone through. This is one reason why folks who have been experienced a lot of traumatic events in their lives find it really difficult to trust other people. Well, we'll get into this a little bit more. All right, so one of the most important things I want to leave with folks is how much of this is subconscious. So, right, these responses are part of the autonomic nervous system, meaning these responses happen automatically. Just as your body is keeping your heart beating and it's keeping your cells, you know, your blood circulating and keeping your lungs pumping and all that sort of stuff. This sort of thing, these responses by and large do not happen on a conscious voluntary, aware level. And in fact, a number of studies have shown that our subconscious mind, runs actually 90 to 95% of our entire lives. We're only aware of very small fraction of really what is going on, of like living our lives. A lot of that, of course, is good, right? We don't have to think about driving the car or, brushing our teeth every time we do it. But some additional awareness of what's going on for most of us would probably be a really good thing. So here's the thing, though. So here's another really great contribution by Dr. Stephen Porges. He coined this term called neuroception. Neuroception is a subconscious threat detection system that is always scanning the environment for danger. And this includes when we're in a deep, deep, deep sleep, right? When we're in the part of sleep where we're actually paralyzed, so our body can do some really big cleaning and repair work, that neuroception function is still working in the background. And if it senses a threat, it'll wake us up like that. If our neuroceptive system is triggered, our body's physiology automatically responds. Automatically. So often, of course, in the context of children, we assume that our children are being manipulative, defiant, oppositional, making bad choices. We don't tend to ascribe quite the same level of sort of purposeful action on the part of adults. But it's important to understand that for the most part, our nervous systems are behaving in the same ways as children and as adults. So adults are also responding mostly subconsciously to these triggers. Now, having said that, with awareness and with training, practice, it is possible to override these responses somewhat, right? So that you can reduce your triggers and you can reduce how your body responds to them. But it is often a mistake to assign a voluntary motivation to somebody who's really lost it, right? If anything, they have they've lost control, and that is actually probably pretty accurate. They do not have control of their neurophysiology anymore, and they are struggling to re-regulate and get back into the social engagement part of their nervous system. So one of the problems, of course, that can happen is that it's possible to develop faulty neuroception, which is usually based on earlier traumatic events and responses. Although I will say too, it can also, I think, be caused by a lot of stress in utero. So if a baby's developing brain is bathed in cortisol and other stress hormones, that child will definitely be more prone to being stressed, to getting triggered by things, because they're more likely, it is possible to get addicted to our own stress hormones, actually. But what can happen is that we become what's called hypervigilant, where you're always on the lookout for danger. So you might know, so obviously a lot of veterans, unfortunately, suffer from this, where there's always scanning a room. They need to know where everybody is. They need to know where the exits are. Kids do this in classrooms where, again, they're not necessarily aware that they're doing it. They need to know where the teachers are, the other students. They need to know where all these sorts of things. And so what happens is that people get really overreactive, and people then think they're, getting mad for no reason, or you're overreacting. It's just not that big a deal. Why are you so upset about that? And again, for the most part, it's not a conscious choice to be irritating, to get angry, to make a fuss about something, maybe to, be startled embarrassingly in public or something. And so, again, if nothing else, I'd love folks who listen, watch this at any time to just really come away with a little bit more understanding and compassion for how some of this works. Because we often ask people to make better choices, but they don't understand. If they don't feel like they're making a choice to behave in a certain way, it just happens, and then they don't understand why it happened. And I think we've all experienced that. It doesn't have to be, some huge mistake that we've made or some big action that has horrible consequence, right? I mean, we just fly off the handle at somebody for no reason. There's never no reason, right? There's never no reason. There's always a reason. And it could just be, it could be anything, so many things, right? You're tired, dehydrated, or, that you're stressed, your nervous system is kind of jacked up. It's overly reactive to the environment around it. And it's seeing threat and danger where there is none. So just gonna keep track of time here. Okay, keep moving along here. So another key point, all of these neurophysiological reactions in our bodies, in our nervous systems, are always adaptive. Okay, from the perspective of the body, our stress responses are always adaptive. They are designed to keep us safe. And of course, in this freeze response context, that keep us alive. They are, at their most basic level, a coping mechanism so that we can live to see another day or another hour or another minute, right? Or how we get by. Now, that does not mean that it's fun or it's easy to live with somebody who has faulty neuroception, right? Who's flying off the handle and easily triggered. It doesn't mean that it's convenient to have to be with or deal with somebody who is going through a stress response. But it does mean that, I will say this, I think we're all always doing the best that we can. And understanding how these processes work is a good first step towards being more understanding and really coming from a place of forgiveness as opposed to a place of blame. Now, I didn't put this on the slide, but I will just say, of course, it does not mean that we don't take responsibility for our actions and our words, because of course we have to take responsibility for that. It does mean that maybe we shouldn't be so quick to blame people necessarily for what they've done or said, right? So how does this relate to the pandemic? Well, right at its core, this whole thing is a threat to health and life, right? So talk about triggering our neuroception. We hear things on the news constantly. We see people wearing masks. And actually that reminds me, I forgot to put this in the slides, but there's another reason why the whole mask wearing thing is also really problematic. Social distancing and isolation, stay-at-home orders, lockdown, not seeing people at work, not seeing family, not being able to travel, not being able to go out and do all the things we do to relax, with other people, is just a huge problem for this, right? It flies completely in the face of what we most need to co-regulate with other people. I think I mentioned this, right? We're fundamentally social creatures, and this co-regulation is really necessary for us to survive as a species, right? That's why isolation and banishment and exile, all those things, I mean, it essentially meant death for somebody in sort of tribal times, because you literally can't live on your own, and not just because you don't have the food and the shelter of your fellow human beings, but because you don't have your fellow human beings. Um, and, you know, at the same time, of course, there is in fact a real potential danger from becoming infected from others. So what are we to do? Um, so Stephen Porges has written some about this, and he says the resources of human contact that humans intuitively use to calm may now signal threat, right? So our nervous systems are in just this, they're in this really tough spot where we're yearning to be with other people, and we're being told, and of course there's evidence to believe um, that in fact being with other people might kill us, or might, you know, cause us to become gravely ill. And it is, the other thing I wanted to say about the masks is that one of the ways, primary way that we learn whether we're safe with other people or whether they're dangerous to us, whether there's a threat, is by reading their facial expressions. We listen to voices a lot, like the prosody of their voices, whether it goes up and down. And we watch people's facial expressions, although a big key for us all as humans is to look at people's eyes, but also their mouths, if they're smiling or not. And when that's taken away from us, it prevents us from getting those social cues about whether people are happy with us or angry, or, you know, those things. And it may seem really kind of basic, but it is, you know, we've developed these systems over thousands and thousands of years now, and to have those clues kind of stripped away from us is somewhat difficult. Now, obviously, people who are have various impairments with sight or hearing, right? They've already had those clues stripped away from them, and they rely on other things to determine whether they're safe or not. But for those of us fortunate to usually be able to rely on those senses, you know, it can be a little tricky. So what are we going to do about all this? Well, the good news is that we're not simply victims to our physiology, and that we can, again, with awareness and practice, soothe, nurture, and calm our stress response so that we can safely return to our social engagement systems. And so I want to just pause here, because then, and what I'm going to do is take us through a bunch of easy, for the most part, and mostly free and inexpensive ways that you can kind of put the brake on the stress response and kind of turn up the volume on your calm, balanced, parasympathetic social engagement system. But let me just stop there and see if there are any questions. I don't think, where am I seeing my chat? Oh, there's my chat. I don't think I have any chat questions. No, okay. All right, so I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, but let me know if you have questions along the way. All right, tip number 1, get grounded. This really means, well, it can mean a couple things. So sometimes people make a distinction between getting grounded and grounding. I actually think that they're very similar. They may be slightly different. But it's all part and parcel of sort of being in the present moment and really connecting with the earth. And I think those are actually two halves of the same coin. So how do we do that? If we are, you know, we're happily in the summer months right now, but it's not always nice to be outside barefoot, but to the extent you can, go out in your front lawn, take the dog for a walk, be in your bare feet, put your feet on the ground. This is where you could hug a tree if you wanted to, or go put your back up against a tree and read a book. Sit in the grass. We don't have a whole lot of beaches around here where I am, of course. I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm talking to kind of a local audience. I'm usually talking to people from all over the place, including in other countries. But so we still don't have a lot of beaches, maybe one or two. But if you can, get your feet in the water, in the sand, awesome way to get grounded. But if you can't, you can just visualize it. Our brains are amazingly powerful. And they also, for the most part, can't tell the difference between something that we're actually experiencing and something we're imagining in our brains, which is kind of cool. So imagine yourself putting your feet in the ocean. Imagine yourself walking in the grass or in the moss. Imagine yourself lying down in the ground and allowing the earth to sort of like all your tension to just like drain into the earth. And then for you to draw back up into you this sort of soothing, earthy, nurturing, really grounding energy. And it can really, really, really help. All right. And this one is kind of related, right? Which is just get outside, get in nature, get some exercise, get some sun. Oh my gosh, there's so much research on how just a few minutes spent in any of these endeavors, and if you can get all three of them at the same time, right, that's really awesome. But moving our bodies is another really good way to sort of ground. But of course, it also gets our blood moving more, our heart moving. It's, all just really good. But the healing power of nature is really can't be overestimated, I think, at this point. Turn off the news, get away from your computer, stand up, walk around, get outside. If you can, go barefoot, go for a walk. If it's sunny out, great. Don't put on sunscreen for, and then cover up after 20 minutes or something. We need vitamin D. Actually, it can be a really big source of depression if we're not getting enough vitamin D as well. So get out there, get away from the screens. Magnesium is a huge hugely important mineral, and I'm trying to remember the percentages, but like 85% of us are really deficient in it. And magnesium is used by our body in hundreds of different metabolic processes. But the thing about magnesium is, especially with regards to stress, the more stressed we are, the more magnesium we dump. The lower our magnesium levels are, the more stressed we are likely to be, right? So it's this sort of downward spiral where the levels get lower and lower and lower and lower. Magnesium is also really good if you get headaches, if you have like restless leg syndrome. And the great thing about magnesium is it's really easy to get more of it. You can get it in so many different ways. You can drink it through some different drinks that you can buy, online or even in the drugstore. Like Calm is one version. You can soak it in a bath, full bath or just a foot bath. Just add some Epsom salts. You can buy sprays, really, really inexpensive. I mean, the Epsom salts are really cheap, of course. And these sprays, you can get a couple bottles that will last you probably 6 months for under 20 bucks. Actually, I have one right here. The other half of one I picked up. This one, I don't know. The brand doesn't really matter as long as it's It's called magnesium oil. It's not really an oil, but it does kind of feel that way. I like to add some essential oils in them, in my bottle, and then I spray them on the bottoms of my feet before I go to bed at night. But you can also eat your magnesium. So dark leafy greens, and here's really good news. Both almonds and dark chocolate both have magnesium. But lots and lots of plants are really high in magnesium. So you can, you can eat it as well. But most of us need to supplement it because we're not getting enough through our diets. Okay, I mentioned essential oils, and lavender is the one that is probably best known for its calming properties, but there are many, many different essential oils that are also very soothing. And I used to hate the smell of lavender, and I've now actually become very fond of it. But I think it was only when I started really buying decent essential oils, and it wasn't like a kind of a fake manufactured lavender smell, that I started to appreciate it. But essential oils are really amazing because their molecules are so small that within minutes of us either smelling them, or if you, certain of them you can't put on your skin, but many of them you can, especially if they're diluted with like a carrier oil. Within minutes, they're completely dispersed throughout the body. So they work really, really quickly. There are all sorts of essential oil companies out there. The two probably biggest known are doTERRA and Young Living. They tend to be a bit more expensive than some other things, but so you can look around. But find an essential oil, you can diffuse them. Diffusers can cost anywhere from 20 to probably 80 or $100, depending on how many bells and whistles. But you put some drops in there in some water, and you can diffuse that in your room at night, or in a living room, just to sort of get everybody chill. You can put some in a spray bottle with just water and spray some on your pillow. You can add it to your Epsom salt bath. You can put some in your laundry so your clothes smell like lavender. So all different ways that you can use lavender. An ounce for ounce or drop for drop, essential oils are actually very cheap. And lavender is one of the least expensive essential oils out there. Water. Drink more water. We all need more water. Most of us are dehydrated. Water is so, so helpful in so many ways. Drinking more water is highly anti-inflammatory. And it also is really, really good for helping us detox, like clearing stuff out of our bodies that we don't need. But it also can help calm you down. If you drink a big glass of water when you're really upset, it can be kind of amazing, actually, how quickly it can sort of take the edge off. And it has something to do with the vagus nerve, if I recall this correctly. And now I don't remember the specifics about this, but give it a try and see what you think. I start every morning with a big glass of lemon water, and I try to have a couple more at least during the day. But I always try to have some, like herbal tea or ice water or maybe seltzer water with a little bit of juice, like with me at all times, all throughout the day. But the other part about water is just being near water, right? There's a reason we love to go to the beach, or we love to go to the lake, or hang out by a river or a stream. I mean, it's just looking at that blue, looking at the water in the ocean, for sure. It has to do with like ionization of the air. That is really, really calming to us. But it's also, right, it's the sound of the water is very soothing, but visually it's also very soothing. If you can't get out to water, pull up something on a screensaver, turn on a YouTube video of either ocean waves, gently on the shore, or a lovely little trickling creek. Some bird songs can really, really, really soothing. You can use that for your sort of nature fix too if you can't get out. All right, breathing. I probably should have put this number 1, but that seemed kind of obvious, so I thought I'd sneak it in here a little bit later. We are the only animals on this planet that can consciously regulate our breathing. How cool is that, right? We can, with a thought, hold our breath, let it go, slow down our inhale, slow down our exhale, change the part of our body that we're breathing from, maybe a little training, a little effort. It's amazing. Just taking a few slow, deep breaths. And deep breaths, I mean like belly breathing, where you're using your diaphragm, not where your shoulders are going up and down, but you're filling your lungs and your diaphragm, which sits like below your rib cage. There are so many different types of breathing that can be really, really helpful to calm things down. And it can be hard to remember to do them in the moment if you're if you're really angry about something. But if you just notice you're stressed, put a timer on your phone, top of the hour, every 2 hours, 3 times a day, whatever. Just sit or stand for a moment, close your eyes, take a nice few deep breaths in. So there's a couple things you can do. You can take kind of rhythmic breathing where your inhale exactly matches your exhale. And generally the longer, slower breath, the more quickly you will find that you calm down. Another really great breathing technique is called box breathing, where you breathe in for, say, 6, hold your breath for another 6 counts, and exhale for 6, and then again hold for 6 before you take another inhale. And if 6 is too long, start with 4, but it's another kind of very rhythmic breathing. But here's the thing about breathing. Inhales activate our sympathetic nervous system. Exhaling, right, which is one reason why we all take deep inhales of breath when we get scared, right? We go, that's what that's doing, okay? But exhales activate our parasympathetic nervous system that puts the brake on the stress response. If you breathe out for a longer count than you breathe in, you're virtually guaranteed to be calmer at the end of it, right? So maybe you breathe in for 6 and you exhale for 4, and you exhale for 6 or 7. But that's a really great thing to learn. Of course, tons of resources online about different types of breathing and their different benefits. And of course, if you do yoga, different types of breath work that your instructor may have taught you. But don't forget to breathe. Sometimes too, we just forget and we realize we've been kind of unconsciously holding our breath. And we just need to let our shoulders drop and let it out. Okay. Tapping. Okay, this one is, of course, a personal favorite because I teach this, but I became certified in this after I realized how much it was helping me. When you tap, you use your fingertips to stimulate acupressure points on your face and your upper body. And it sends calming signals to your brain. It calms down your brainwave frequencies. It increases your heart rate variability, which is a good thing associated with health. It reduces cortisol levels dramatically. It's just a really, really great tool to have kind of at your fingertips at all times. So I'm not going to go into how to tap in this presentation, but I wanted to for sure include it because once you learn it, it's something you can do for free. All right, reset the vagus nerve. This one is kind of interesting. So There's a really talented craniosacral therapist in Denmark who I've had the pleasure of interviewing a couple times. He's Stanley Rosenberg, and he's written a really kind of remarkable book, which I do not have right here, called Accessing the Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve. And it's pretty technical book, but if you kind of like to nerd out on like cranial nerves and what they do and how you can do some self exercises to sort of affect different parts of your cranial nerve system and affect your vagus nerve. It's a really cool book. But he has one exercise I'm going to show you really quickly. So if you're out of sorts, and I forget to do this. Best to do this lying down, but I'm going to show you. Lace your fingers, place them so they're kind of nestling at the very bottom of your skull, right, just above your neck. And what you're going to do, and have your elbows open. You're going to not move your head, but you're going to look sharply, both eyes, to one direction or the other. I don't think it matters which way you start. And it might be a bit of a strain on your eyes. And you're going to stay there. It might take 30 seconds or even a minute until you yawn or sigh. Okay. And then you do it on the other side. Okay. Sometimes that takes longer, and my eyes don't care for that much. But Stanley's done a bunch of sort of testing on that and found that can bring people out of either fight or flight or free state and literally reset their vagus nerve so it puts them back into the social engagement part of their vagus nerve. So that is kind of cool because it doesn't take very long and something you can do over and over and over again if you need to. Because, we slip in and out of these states. Sometimes we don't even notice them, right? Because we've just slipped a little bit out of the social engagement system. It's not like a completely binary switch, I don't think. I think it's more like a turning up the dial and then, you've slipped out too far and then you really notice that you've been like snapping at people or you're really irritated, you're short, you're whatever. Anyway, you want to calm back down. This is a kind of a nice exercise for that. Okay, I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. Eat differently. Oh my gosh. Food is critical in terms of affecting our mood and affecting our stress. When our body has the nutrients and the building blocks it needs, this also has to do with the microbiome, right? The fungi and the bacteria that populate our mouth and our gut. And they outnumber us significantly in terms of cells in our body, and actually in terms of DNA, which is kind of amusing in some way. We rely on our bacteria a lot, and they need a lot of different foods so that they can remain in balance. But 90% of our serotonin is manufactured in our gut, and I think 50 to 60% of dopamine. So those are neurotransmitters that highly affect our mood. We just, if you think about eating the rainbow, eating real food, not processed food, and a variety of food, really, really, really good. That can also be super, super helpful at just providing us with the vitamins and the minerals that we need. And of course, think differently. Oh my gosh, right? We can choose our thoughts. And we also have the ability to become mindful of our thoughts so that we can notice when we're being critical of ourselves or other people, when we're beating up on ourselves, where we're thinking that we're not enough or we're not worthy of happiness, or we fall into worries and fears and what people call sort of scarcity or lack mindset, right? There's not enough, I don't have enough. All of those things that, plague most of us as human beings. We do, in fact, have the ability to change the way we think. And our thoughts have an instantaneous effect on our physiology, like instantaneous. There's a whole field of knowledge out there called epigenetics, which is the study of how the limited number of genes that humans have, right? The Human Genome Project expected to find well over 100,000 genes in the human DNA, and they found like about 20,000. In fact, I think an earthworm has more more genes than, or perhaps it's a fruit fly. Anyway, we're kind of down there when it comes to the number of genes we have. So how do we end up being these like incredibly complex creatures? It's because of gene expression. So our genes can be turned on or off based on different proteins, which is also why we need to eat lots and lots of different kinds of food so that we have the protein available to turn on the good genes and and let the genes that are associated with inflammatory responses and stress and disease, leave those unactivated. So our thoughts are enormously, enormously powerful. All right, this is kind of an interesting one. If you know yoga, you might be familiar with, I think this is often called waterfall stance, but this one is also very much associated with soothing, with calming, with kind of lowering the stress response. And, you can do it lying in bed. If you've got a wall nearby, you can do it on the floor. You don't have to have your legs up on the wall. I think you can just stick them up in the air. And it doesn't actually take that long before it starts to feel a whole lot better. Crystals. This one might feel a bit woo to people. I don't know. Crystals are just fun, though. Actually, I have a bunch right here that I hadn't pulled out in a while. I pulled out all my sort of white crystals, like moonstone and clear quartz. And I don't even know what all of these are. But they're beautiful. And they also have a specific sort of energy frequency that they can impart to those around them. And you can look up online, what different crystals mean and what they can be used for. But they can be really beautiful to have around. And, you can get polished ones or not polished ones, especially small ones are very inexpensive. And it can just be fun, especially if you've got kids. You can let them go pick out a crystal that's kind of calling their name. That can be kind of a different way to go about this. If you're racking your brain and nothing's really resonating with you, this might be the one. Look up. I had not heard about this one until a year and a half ago, maybe now. This is kind of a brain hack. In general, when we're sad, depressed, upset, stressed, we lower our eyes and we look down. We drop our chins. Of course, we hunch our shoulders. We do all that things. If we look up, raise our chin, look up into the sky, it fools your brain into thinking that you are feeling better than you are, with the result that you end up feeling better, which is kind of cool. And it's sort of surprising how quickly it can work. Now, I don't know, is it going to like bring you out of a deep depression? I don't know, but can it bring you out of feeling really pissed off at somebody in the moment? Yes, I think it can. And if you're just sort of noticing that you're starting to feel off, give it a try. Okay, get creative. This is, boy, something that most of us need to spend a whole lot more time on, right? When we are, this is where we get into the flow. This is where we can get into the zone, right? Where you have no idea what time it is and you don't care because you're just, your brain is literally in a different brainwave frequency. You're like kind of in a light meditative state. You're completely focused. You're completely focused in the moment. You're in the here and the now. and you're expressing yourself. And there's all sorts of ways that this can be done. Of course, I've just put a few examples on here, but um, allow your soul to express itself, and don't be afraid to do things that bring you joy. Put a smile on your face. Boy, we all need more of that, right? All right, so TRE is the other modality that I teach, and it involves teaching the body how to turn on a tremor response, which is literally a shaking that usually starts in the legs and the hips, and it can move up to the spine and the arms and the head. Looks really weird when you're watching it, but when you're actually experiencing it, it feels really good. And it's discharging all this stuck, pent up, kind of clogged energy that most of us have stored in our bodies, deep inside our fascia, which is like this little lattice work of connective tissue that like covers our muscles, runs throughout our entire body, and also deep in our muscles. And the neat thing about TRE, which is why I got interested in it, is that it does not involve conscious thought. So if you've had a serious trauma, or you're just stressed and you don't want to talk about it with somebody, tremoring allows you to discharge all that stress without having to remember it, without having to talk about it at all. And it just allows your body to heal itself. It's a pretty cool modality, and it's used a lot for sort of big T traumas, like in refugee camps and Civil War survivors and first responders and veterans and things like that. But it's also used for just like everyday people who've got a lot of stress. So remember, we talked about that fight flight response and even the freeze response too. If we don't allow our body to get rid of all that energy, it just sort of sticks around, and then we take on more and more and more and more of it. And that's when we find ourselves really stressed. That's when we start to get ourselves sick. That's when we're more vulnerable to disease because our immune function is suppressed. Anyway, so look into TRE if you want to learn more. It's really cool, but not very well known modality. All right, almost done here. Animals. Animals are awesome, right? Now, I don't know, maybe you've got an allergy, you can't have a dog or a cat. Maybe you have a bird, maybe you can have a bunny or chinchilla or something, I don't know. Or maybe you can just watch cute animal videos online. But animals have a very special sort of energy. There's a reason why people with pets live happier, longer lives, right? There's all that unconditional love and forgiveness, and they get us out. They get us, if they're dogs, they tend to get us out, meeting our neighbors out on walks. Purring of cats has known healing benefits. The vibrational frequency of a purr is very healing. So animals are just awesome. And so turn to your animals if you've got them, and allow them to help you, soothe your nervous system. And music. Oh my gosh. So different ways you can use this. One, you can obviously just listen to music that you love. And that can either, pick you up, or that can calm you down, or you can listen to like meditation or chanting, or, that kind of thing. But also humming stimulates the vagus nerve to, again, calm down the stress response and turn on the social engagement system. So that can be really, really, really helpful thing to do. If you find you're really in a jam, just hum quietly under your breath. Even nobody even needs to know you're doing it. They don't need to hear it at all, and it can really help calm you down. Hugging yourself. Okay, clearly hugging other people is more fun than hugging yourself. But if we are in a position, especially now, where that's not possible, it is possible to hug yourself. I don't think we get the same oxytocin response, right? Which is the kind of the intimacy, kind of love hormone. It's actually the hormone that helps mothers give birth, actually, as well. But you know, just it also, what hugging yourself can do is help you feel safe. It helps you know that you are in your body, that you are right here, especially if you like tap on your arms. But you know, it can also be used as a form of just like affection and love for oneself. So that can be really helpful. But if you have a chance to hug other people, do it for a long time. At least 20 seconds is good, and longer is better. And that is longer than you think it is. Give it a try. Okay. I went a little bit longer than I wanted to, but lots of information. So I want to thank you for joining me. I want to just close by letting you know that I do offer packages of sessions for EFT and TRE. And I operate out of the St. Louis Wellness Center. And right now I mostly book a large room, so there's plenty of space that we can keep. Social distancing practices. I'm not crazy about doing TRE online, because at least initially when I'm working with somebody, but EFT works very well online. So that is always doable. And I'm offering my next group tapping class. I think it's just $20 for an hour next Thursday. There's usually the first Thursday of the month. I haven't done them for a little while, but I thought I'd start back up again. So if you're new to tapping, you want to learn what it's about, how it can help you. It's super flexible practice that I think really everybody should know how to do. And you can learn more at the Wellness Center's website, or I have my own website there, stlstressrelease.com. And I've also got a Facebook page where you can get more information. So if anybody's got questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll check the chat here. Whoops, come back here. I'm going to say thank you for joining me. And I hope it's been informative. I know it's a little sciencey there in certain parts, but I really do think this is information that everybody should know about how their own nervous system works and why they respond perhaps the way they do. And then, as I mentioned earlier, maybe be a bit more able to be compassionate, understanding, empathetic, have a little bit more grace perhaps for yourself, for other people, and how they're reacting to things. Because we don't always have conscious control over these responses. But once we understand what's going on, then we're better able to sort of step back, take a breath, notice it, and say, oh my God, I am really heading full-fledged in the fight or flight response. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go take a few deep breaths. I'm going to have a big drink of cold water. I'm going to go hum in the bathroom for a few minutes, whatever the case may be. So.
Well, Allison, I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, great. I'm trying to put myself on, but I don't know how to do that exactly. I'm usually on the other side of this. See if that works. Nope. That didn't work. I'm gonna stop sharing. Oh, you're trying to turn your video on? Yeah, just so that you can see who you're talking to. If you go to the bottom, it's usually on the bottom left, or else in the top right of your own box. Yeah, I don't see anything. Well, you might not be on a device that has a camera. Maybe, I don't know. Well, that's okay. I do. That's okay. Did you have a question or? Oh, I was just going to say that you did a fabulous job. Oh, thank you. I am a yoga therapist, so I totally understand what you're saying. I just wanted to hear it from your perspective and what your take on it was. Because the polyvagal theory is, to me, one of the most important things that's out there today to help in stress.
Yeah,
And
just,
I
yeah.
have I have people who have done tapping before, some of my clients, and they've had a great job with it. Um, I think the thing that's most difficult is keeping them up doing it.
Yes.
Um, they get to
Yeah, the
feel better.
continuity. It's, I mean, I'll say it's tough for me too. I trade sessions with another practitioner every week. And until I did that, I was sometimes not doing as much as I should either. And I still forget to tap when I get upset about something. I forget about it. It's just human nature to forget the tools that we have. And unless it takes a while to really turn them into a habit. But um, yeah, it's a really great tool. And I love teaching people about it because people can often get really great results in a very short amount of time. And that's motivating.
Yes, yes, that's what I saw in particularly one client who had some childhood trauma, not sexual related, but more, um, I would say, abandonment issues, pretty big.
Yeah.
And as long as he did the tapping, he really had a much more calm. He was a calm guy anyway. He was very kappa, very, very calm, but he felt better about himself. It was his self-worth that
Yeah.
he felt like he was okay.
Although I will say, sometimes people who seem calm are actually um, walking around in what some people call a functional freeze state,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. That's
Where
where I
they're
was just going to
kind of
go with
mostly
it.
dissociated. And that
Yes.
gives them the appearance of being calm, but really they're kind of checked out.
Mhm.
And not
Yes,
not
you're right.
consciously, right? Again, it's that adaptive survival mechanism. Like it's the world is not a safe place, so we're not going to participate all that much in it. But luckily there are all sorts of other modalities, of course, out there that can also help with that too. Um, but
And I'm
and
very
yoga is
interested
one of them, of
in
course,
the
right?
retreat. Oh yeah. Yeah, I actually for trauma, depending on where the person's at, to get them to feel safe is the most important thing. And then
Yes.
you can work from there on.
Yeah.
And to me, that is just really the hard. It's one of the most difficult things, particularly with multiple, uh, complex PTSD versus just
Yeah.
one incident.
Well, and it's one of the things that schools are going to have to grapple with if they open is um, kids maybe not even recognizing that they're scared to be there or of their fellow students or teachers, but that may be going on too. So it's going to be an interesting rest of the year. And it's interesting. I think people are so familiar with yoga as a stress release thing that it's one reason I didn't include yoga in my list because I figured, well, everybody knows about yoga. So anyway, but I'm so glad. Well,
Well,
thank
the
you so much.
breathing,
Uh-huh.
yes, take care. And if I have any clients that I think, does the TRE work for more complex traumas or
Yeah, it really
more?
can. It was developed initially more for what you might think of as kind of shock traumas, um, but it
Mhm.
definitely can be helpful with more developmental, complex trauma as well. I definitely have seen it work in that area as well. Just again, it's just releasing all that. It's just helping you feel safe in your body again, and helping your body unwind. Um, and it, you
So
know,
do you work on so many sessions or?
I usually do like 3 and 5 or 6 session packages, just so people have a chance to kind of give it a try.
And how
Usually
long are the sessions in
about an
time
hour.
wise?
Yeah. Usually the first one is a little long, it's definitely an hour. The follow-up ones tend to not take maybe quite so long just because there's not quite as much explanation.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then the EFT sessions definitely, those, there's, can go a full hour for sure because there's
And
always
the
subject
the
matter.
charge is so much per package or per
Yeah, and
session?
you know what? I should know this off the top of my head, but I think I just shifted them and I have to look that up online at the moment.
Yeah, and
But it is definitely on the website.
on the website of the place. Okay.
Yes, I think I have it. It should be on the St. Louis Wellness Center
Wellness Center.
website and on my own website. Yeah, but I'll just verify that when I hang up here, make sure that is
Okay.
still true. Yeah, but thank you so much. I appreciate you joining me tonight. All
Sorry
right.
you froze up there.
Oh, yep. Well, that's okay. I was just going to say thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I appreciate your being here.
Well, thank you so much. And our
Absolutely.
paths could cross, who knows?
Okay. Yes. Yeah, that would be great. Thanks so much, Kate. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.